In the vast and ancient plains of Mesopotamia, where the waters of the Euphrates once shimmered beneath the sun, there rose a city unlike any other. Its name would echo through the corridors of time, woven into both the glory and the shame of human history. Babylon, a name that in the Bible stirs images of greatness, rebellion, and divine judgment. But what was this city really like? How did it rise from dust to become a beacon of human ambition, and a symbol of spiritual corruption? Today, we will uncover the secrets of Babylon. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, and share it with others who hunger for the deep truths hidden in Scripture. What you will hear is not just history, it is a warning, a mirror, and a revelation for our times. The story of Babylon begins in the earliest chapters of Genesis, in the aftermath of the Great Flood. Humanity, united by one language, sought to build a city and a tower whose top would reach into the heavens. This was more than just architecture, it was a declaration of independence from God, a statement that man could ascend to the divine without the Creator's permission. The Tower of Babel was the seed, and Babylon was the fruit. Centuries later, the Babylon we know from the Bible rose to its full glory under King Nebuchadnezzar II. The city was immense, fortified by massive double walls that stretched for miles, wide enough for chariots to race upon them. The Hanging Gardens, whether myth or reality, became one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, a symbol of the city's opulence and engineering mastery. Temples rose in honor of Marduk, Ishtar, and other pagan gods, each filled with gold, incense, and the chants of priests offering sacrifices to idols of stone. But beneath the shimmering gold lay a spiritual darkness. Babylon was not just a political and economic power, it was a spiritual stronghold, a place where false worship was enshrined, and where the pride of man was exalted above the will of Yahweh. The prophets spoke of her arrogance, her cruelty, and her seduction of nations through luxury and idolatry. Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Daniel all warned of the judgment that would come upon her. The city's splendor was intoxicating. Merchants thrived in its markets, soldiers guarded its treasures, and scholars studied the stars from its famed ziggurats. Yet the same walls that kept enemies out could not keep the justice of God away. The book of Daniel gives us a vivid glimpse inside its royal palace, a feast where Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, drank from the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem. In that moment of drunken arrogance, the mysterious writing appeared on the wall, Mene, Tekel, Parsin, a divine verdict of judgment. Babylon's downfall came suddenly. While the city slept, the armies of Cyrus the Great diverted the waters of the Euphrates, slipping under the gates and capturing the city in a single night. The empire that had once seemed invincible was gone, fulfilling the very prophecies that had been spoken against her. But Babylon did not vanish entirely. Its physical ruins became dust, but its spirit, the system of pride, idolatry, and rebellion against God, continued to live on. The book of Revelation calls her, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. This is not just a reference to the ancient city, but to a global system that will rise again in the last days, deceiving nations with wealth, pleasure, and false religion. As we journey deeper into this series, we will explore Babylon not only as a city of bricks and mortar, but as a spiritual force, a kingdom opposed to the kingdom of God. Its history is a warning for all who would put their trust in human strength rather than divine truth. Remember, Babylon was not built in a day, and neither will her final fall come without the unfolding of God's perfect plan. The same hands, the chronicles of Babylon stretch far beyond what most history books dare to reveal. When the sun dipped low behind the horizon, casting a golden glow across the Euphrates, the city would come alive in a way that seemed almost otherworldly. The streets filled with merchants offering goods from the farthest reaches of the known world, spices from Arabia, lapis lazuli from the east, cedar from Lebanon. But behind the hum of commerce, there was a deeper pulse, one tied to the city's role as a spiritual and political center of immense influence. Babylon was more than a city of walls and temples, it was a stage upon which the powers of heaven and the ambitions of men collided. Towering above the city's heart was the great ziggurat, Etam Enki, a name that means, house of the foundation of heaven and earth. It was here that the ancient people believed that gods descended to commune with humanity, and it was here that priests guarded secrets whispered only in the shadow of the sacred chambers. But these priests were not merely guardians of tradition, many of them were initiates into hidden orders, keepers of mysteries so old they predated the city itself. Those who were permitted to pass through the inner sanctum spoke of walls lined with strange symbols, celestial charts marking the movements of the stars, and scrolls bound in leather that contained the knowledge of civilizations long forgotten. Babylon's influence extended far beyond its own borders. It was a melting pot of cultures, languages, and beliefs, but also a place where truth could be twisted to serve the ambitions of kings. The prophets of the Bible saw the city not only as a marvel of human achievement but also as a symbol of defiance against the Most High. Its rulers often sought to replace the worship of the true God with the exaltation of their own power. Every festival, every ritual, every decree seemed to carry an undercurrent. Babylon was not simply existing under God's watch, it was challenging his authority. One of the most striking aspects of Babylon was its ability to cloak its deepest truths in symbols and stories. To the common citizen, the grand processional ways lined with lions and bulls were mere art, yet to the initiated, they spoke of ancient covenants between rulers and the spiritual forces they served. The Ishtar Gate, with its gleaming blue tiles and sacred animals, was more than a triumphal entrance. It was a statement of the city's alignment with its patron deities, a visual reminder that Babylon's glory was inseparable from its spiritual allegiances. But what those allegiances truly represented was a question the prophets answered with severity: the worship of false gods and the embrace of idolatry. The grandeur of the hanging gardens, if they indeed stood as legend describes, was another reflection of Babylon's mastery over nature. Lush greenery spilling over tiered terraces, streams flowing in perfect order, it was as if the city sought to rival the Garden of Eden itself. Yet even in this splendor, there was an unspoken tension. To imitate paradise while rejecting the Creator was, in the eyes of the prophets, an act of supreme arrogance. Babylon, in its quest to create heaven on earth, ignored the reality that true paradise comes only from God. At night, under the watchful gaze of the stars, the city seemed to shimmer with secrets. The astronomers, or Chaldeans, as the Bible calls them, studied the heavens with precision unmatched in their time. They could predict eclipses, track planets, and mark the turning of seasons. Yet, intertwined with their science was the darker art of divination. The line between observation and worship blurred, and the knowledge of the skies often became a tool for controlling people through omens and prophecies that did not come from the Lord. It was in this mingling of truth and deception that Babylon's danger truly lay. The city did not simply oppose God through brute force, it seduced the world through beauty, culture, and wisdom corrupted by pride. This was why, in the visions of the prophets, Babylon appeared as a golden cup filled with abominations, dazzling on the outside, deadly within. It was not enough for Babylon to dominate lands, it sought to shape the very hearts and minds of those it ruled. The prophets warned that such a city, no matter how mighty, could not stand forever. Isaiah and Jeremiah spoke of Babylon's downfall in vivid terms, foretelling that its walls would crumble, its palaces would fall silent, and its once lively streets would be left desolate. And yet, even in these warnings, there was an undertone that went beyond the physical city. Babylon became a symbol, a representation of any kingdom, system, or power that sets itself against the Most High. As the centuries passed, the echoes of Babylon's influence did not fade. From generation to generation, its spirit reappeared in new forms, in empires, in ideologies, in movements that promised enlightenment but led to spiritual bondage. The ancient city's legacy was not merely in its ruins but in the way it taught the world to mix truth with deception, to seek glory apart from God. And so, the mystery of Babylon remains not only a historical question but a spiritual one, a thread woven through the fabric of human history. The mighty Babylon rose from the fertile soil between the Tigris and Euphrates, yet it was not mere geography that shaped its destiny, it was ambition, power, and the ever-present shadow of rebellion against the Most High. As its towers climbed toward the heavens, they did not merely scrape the clouds, they challenged divine authority. The city pulsed with life, its streets echoing with the chants of priests, the clinking of merchants' coins, and the cries of slaves brought from far-off lands. But beneath the grandeur lay a spirit that had long been foretold in the scriptures, the spirit of Babylon, a power that would endure beyond bricks and mortar, weaving itself into the fabric of human history. The people of Babylon saw themselves as the center of the world. From their ziggurats, those colossal, tiered temples, they believed they could draw the attention and favor of their gods. But these gods were not the creator of heaven and earth, they were idols of stone and gold, shaped by human hands yet demanding human souls in return. It was here that sorcery and astrology were elevated to the highest honor, and where knowledge was pursued not for wisdom, but for control. Babylon became a city where the mystical arts and political power walked hand in hand, forming a dominion that drew nations into its orbit. Travelers who entered Babylon were often overwhelmed. Its hanging gardens, one of the wonders of the ancient world, defied nature itself, as if the city had learned to imitate the Creator's work. The Euphrates flowed through the heart of the metropolis, both lifeblood and defense, its waters reflecting the gleam of countless temples. The Ishtar Gate, with its vivid blue tiles adorned with lions and dragons, proclaimed to every visitor that they had stepped into a kingdom unlike any other. But the beauty masked a deep corruption, a system in which power was preserved through fear, manipulation, and the spilling of innocent blood. The kings of Babylon were not content to rule only their own land. From Hammurabi's code, which sought to order life by human decree, to Nebuchadnezzar's campaigns of conquest, the city's rulers believed their dominion should extend over all the earth. And at the height of its glory, Babylon was indeed feared and envied in equal measure. Yet the word of the Lord had already spoken, this city, for all its splendor, would one day fall, becoming a heap of ruins, never to be rebuilt. The prophets' voices rang out, warning of the arrogance that had taken root in its heart, an arrogance that mirrored the rebellion at Babel, where humanity once sought to build a tower to the heavens. Still, the people did not listen. Instead, they doubled down on their pursuit of power. Every feast, every celebration, became an offering to the gods of their own making. Every victory in battle was credited to Marduk or Ishtar, while the true God was mocked or ignored. The wealth of nations poured into Babylon, and with it came not gratitude, but decadence. The city's markets overflowed with precious stones, rare spices, and exotic animals, but the cries of the oppressed could still be heard in its back alleys. Merchants grew rich, priests grew fat, and kings grew ever more convinced that they ruled by divine right. Yet there were those within the city walls who remembered the truth. The captives of Israel, exiled from their homeland, sang songs of Zion by the rivers of Babylon, their voices carrying the memory of a God who could not be carved from stone. They spoke of a day when the city's walls would crumble, when its golden idols would be shattered, and when the nations would see the futility of trusting in the works of their own hands. Their faith was a thorn in Babylon's side, a reminder that the Most High still ruled over the kingdoms of men. Babylon's rise was not sudden, nor would its fall be. It grew like a tree planted in rich soil, spreading its branches wide, sheltering both the wicked and the weary beneath its leaves. But like that tree in the visions of the prophets, it would one day be cut down, leaving only a stump bound with iron and bronze until the appointed time. For every city, no matter how mighty, stands or falls by the will of God. And Babylon, for all its glory, was no exception. Even now, centuries after its fall, the spirit of Babylon lingers in the world. It is found in every system that exalts human pride above divine truth, in every empire that builds itself on the backs of the oppressed, in every culture that trades righteousness for luxury. The ancient city may be dust, but its legacy still calls to those who would seek power at any cost. And just as in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, the call to resist its seduction still echoes, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins." In the end, Babylon was both a place and a symbol, a reminder that human glory fades, but God's word endures forever. The bricks of its walls have crumbled, its gardens have withered, and its gates stand silent, but the lesson remains: no tower built in defiance of heaven will stand, no throne raised against the Most High will last. Babylon was not merely a city. It was a phenomenon. A living legend that seemed to rise out of the very dust of the Mesopotamian plains, shimmering under the desert sun like a mirage, yet more solid and imposing than anything its visitors had ever seen. For those who approached it from afar, the first impression was always the same, awe mixed with disbelief. Its sheer scale was enough to silence even the most talkative travelers. The walls, colossal and unbroken, surrounded the city like the embrace of a giant. Some ancient accounts claimed they were wide enough for chariots to race side by side atop them, and while historians debate the accuracy of such descriptions, no one questioned the fact that these defenses were engineering marvels for their time. The bricks bore the mark of Babylonian craftsmanship, sun-baked and meticulously aligned, sealed together with a bitumen mortar that gave them an almost eternal solidity. And then there was the legendary Ishtar Gate. Travelers would pass through its towering archway and be met with the brilliance of glazed bricks in a deep, otherworldly blue. This blue was not mere paint, it was created through a rare and expensive process, using minerals that had been traded from distant lands, each brick fired until it held a permanent, glassy sheen. Embossed upon the gate were rows of sacred animals, lions representing Ishtar herself, bulls symbolizing the storm god Adad, and dragons, the mysterious Meshusu, sacred to Marduk, Babylon's chief deity. In the sun, these creatures almost seemed to move, their scaled bodies catching the light in a way that gave them an unsettling realism. Beyond the Ishtar Gate stretched the processional way, a grand avenue that cut through the heart of the city. During religious festivals, it became the stage for elaborate processions in which priests, musicians, and nobles would march toward the great temple, carrying statues of gods on golden platforms. The sound of drums and flutes would echo against the high walls, and the air would be heavy with incense and the scent of burning offerings. Even on ordinary days, the processional way was alive with activity. Merchants displayed goods from across the known world, fine linens from Egypt, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, cedar wood from Lebanon, and spices whose scents could lure even the most disciplined traveler into temptation. In the markets, languages from every corner of the empire intertwined in a constant murmur: Akkadian, the language of ancient kings; Aramaic, the common tongue of traders; Persian, Egyptian, and dialects from as far as India. Babylon was a hub where cultures met, traded, and influenced one another. It was here that a man could buy ivory from Africa, pearls from the Persian Gulf, and wine from distant vineyards, all without leaving the city walls. Yet Babylon was not only a place of wealth and trade. It was a center of knowledge, a cradle of ancient science. The city's scholars, working in the shadow of its temples, recorded the movements of stars and planets with astonishing precision. They believed the heavens were a divine script, and by reading it, they could foresee the fate of kingdoms. Clay tablets covered in wedge-shaped cuneiform recorded their observations, preserving the earliest forms of astronomy and mathematics. These scholars were also healers, using a combination of herbal remedies, incantations, and surgical techniques that blended science with religion. The heart of Babylon's spiritual life beat within the Esagila, the great temple dedicated to Marduk. It was here that priests, dressed in white linen robes, performed rituals meant to maintain harmony between the gods and humankind. Offerings of bread, beer, and incense were made daily, while grand festivals honored the turning of seasons and the renewal of kingship. Some accounts, including those preserved in biblical writings, suggest that these ceremonies often blurred the line between worship and excess, as the city's devotion to its gods was intertwined with feasts, celebrations, and acts that would later be condemned by Hebrew prophets. Above the city, dominating the skyline, rose the Ziggurat Etemenenki, believed by some to be the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel. This stepped pyramid soared toward the heavens, each terrace built with thousands of bricks, symbolizing the connection between earth and sky. Pilgrims and priests would ascend its ramps to reach the shrine at its summit, where they believed heaven itself was close enough to touch. For the Babylonians, this was not simply architecture, it was theology carved into stone. But alongside its brilliance, Babylon carried an air of mystery and danger. To the biblical prophets, it was a city of pride, idolatry, and moral corruption. Isaiah spoke of it as, the beauty of kingdoms, the glory of the Chaldeans' pride, destined for sudden downfall. In the book of Revelation, Babylon became the symbol of the world's spiritual rebellion against God, the great harlot that seduced nations with wealth and power. And so, for all its glory, Babylon's name became synonymous not just with beauty, but with temptation, arrogance, and inevitable judgment. By night, Babylon transformed into a different world. Oil lamps flickered in doorways, casting long shadows across mud brick streets. The air cooled, carrying the scent of date palms and the distant sound of music. Nobles feasted in grand halls adorned with mosaics and golden cups, while in hidden corners, whispered transactions and clandestine rituals took place. There were quarters dedicated to artisans who worked by lamplight, shaping clay, weaving textiles, or engraving intricate designs into bronze. There were gardens, perhaps even the legendary Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, where lush greenery and flowing water created an oasis in the heart of the desert. Though their existence is still debated by historians, ancient descriptions speak of terraced gardens irrigated by ingenious systems, overflowing with exotic plants from across the empire. To walk through Babylon was to feel its contradictions. It was both sacred and profane, scholarly and indulgent, ordered and chaotic. It was a city that drew people in, for trade, for opportunity, for glory, yet one that could just as easily swallow a man's soul in its opulence and vice. For the Babylonians, it was the center of the world. For their enemies, it was a glittering trap. And for the prophets, it was a warning carved in history. Even centuries after its fall to the Persians in 539 BC, Babylon's legend endured. The ruins still whispered of its past. The crumbling walls, the remnants of the Ishtar Gate, the scattered tablets, it was an empire carved into the earth with ambition, wealth, and defiance against the God of heaven. As the centuries passed, its reputation only grew darker, wrapped in layers of myth, prophecy, and archaeological mystery. The more one peers into its history, the more it becomes clear that Babylon was more than just bricks and stone, it was a statement, a symbol of human pride raised to challenge divine authority. Its walls were said to be so wide that chariots could race side by side upon them, an unshakable testament to its power. Towering gates, like the famous Ishtar Gate, gleamed with blue-glazed bricks and intricate depictions of lions, dragons, and bulls, symbols of the city's gods and its earthly dominance. Yet behind this dazzling exterior lay an undercurrent of spiritual rebellion. For Babylon was more than a political center, it was the beating heart of an ancient worldview that exalted man's power above the Creator. The prophet Isaiah, in the scriptures, spoke of Babylon with a mixture of awe and condemnation. He described its splendor but also its inevitable fall, calling it the glory of kingdoms, yet destined to be overthrown by the judgment of the Almighty. The book of Daniel reveals the city's arrogance in the form of King Nebuchadnezzar, who walked upon his palace roof and declared, "Is this not great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power?" Those words would echo through history as the epitome of human pride, and soon, divine justice followed. Religious practices in Babylon were deeply entwined with its political power. Temples dedicated to Marduk, Ishtar, and other deities formed the spiritual core of the city. The famed ziggurat, Etemenanke, was said to be the inspiration for the Tower of Babel, another act of man reaching toward heaven in defiance of God. The priests of Babylon were not merely religious figures, they were political influencers, wielding control through oracles, rituals, and interpretations of celestial signs. But what made Babylon legendary was not just its architecture or rituals, it was the way it shaped the destiny of nations. When Babylon conquered Jerusalem, it took with it not only treasures but also the very people of God, dragging them into exile. In doing so, it became a prophetic symbol, representing the world's systems that lure humanity away from the worship of the true God. This is why the book of Revelation later calls it, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. Even today, archaeology was more than a city. It was an empire of thought, a living embodiment of rebellion against the Creator. By the time it reached the height of its power, Babylon was not only feared for its armies or admired for its architectural wonders, it was revered as the center of human wisdom and spiritual deception. Every stone, every street, and every tower was a reflection of its core philosophy: humanity could reach divinity without the need for God. The Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, were not merely a display of wealth. They symbolized the human desire to recreate paradise by human hands, a counterfeit Eden. This was the heart of Babylon's mystery: to take what God had created and twist it into a man-made imitation, designed to replace the Creator in the hearts of people. In the great ziggurats, priests conducted rituals that connected Babylon to the unseen realms. Incense rose like a veil between the earthly and the spiritual, and the chants of the priesthood echoed in the air, calling on powers that promised prosperity, victory, and secret knowledge. But beneath this religious splendor, darkness reigned. The knowledge they sought was not the wisdom of heaven, it was the forbidden counsel of fallen angels, the whispers of those who had once stood in the courts of God and had been cast down. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah looked upon Babylon and saw more than a political threat. They saw the pattern of a spiritual system that would echo through time, a mystery that would rise again in the last days. They warned that Babylon would be humbled, its idols shattered, its rivers dried up. But they also spoke of a greater Babylon, a spiritual Babylon, that would deceive nations at the end of the age. In the market squares of ancient Babylon, merchants from every corner of the earth traded in gold, silver, spices, and precious stones. But hidden beneath the prosperity was another trade, the commerce of souls. People became commodities in a city where pleasure, power, and wealth were the ultimate goals. And in this, Babylon foreshadowed the world we live in today, where the value of a human life is often measured in profit and truth is traded for convenience. At night, when the torches lit the walls and the music of festivals filled the air, the city seemed eternal, invincible. The laughter of its rulers echoed in the palaces, and the people believed nothing could bring Babylon down. Yet God's eyes were on the city. The prophets had spoken, the pride of Babylon would be its downfall. The night the empire fell was not marked by an earthquake or a fire from the sky, it was something far more precise. While the rulers feasted and mocked the God of Israel, using the sacred vessels from the temple in Jerusalem, a hand appeared and wrote on the palace wall, Min, Tekel, Parsin. Daniel, a servant of the Most High, interpreted the words: the days of Babylon's kingdom were numbered, it had been weighed in the balance and found wanting, and its rule would be divided. That very night, without a single battle in the streets, the city's gates were opened, and the Persians walked in. The river Euphrates, the lifeblood of Babylon, had been diverted, a prophecy fulfilled. But the fall of the physical Babylon was only the beginning. Its spirit, its philosophy, its mysteries did not vanish. They traveled through history, morphing into new forms, embedding themselves in empires, religions, and governments. And in the book of Revelation, John sees it once more, not as a single city, but as a global system, draped in luxury, intoxicated with power, and drunk with the blood of the saints. Babylon's legacy is not just a story of the past, it is a prophecy of the future. The city's rise and fall is a warning to every generation, that the path of pride, idolatry, and rebellion against the Creator leads to inevitable destruction. And when the final Babylon rises, it will promise peace and unity, it will dazzle the nations with its beauty and wisdom, but beneath its golden crown will be the same serpents lie whispered in Eden, you will be like God. The mysteries of Babylon are not fully solved. They are a shadow cast across history, a puzzle whose last piece will only be revealed at the end of the age. And as the days grow darker, the call is clear, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For the fall of Babylon will come suddenly, and her destruction will be complete. And dominance, carried within it the seeds of its own destruction. The prophets of Israel, inspired by the Spirit of Yahweh, spoke with an unshakable certainty: the mighty city would fall, its palaces would crumble, and its streets would become silent. Isaiah's voice rang like a trumpet, declaring, Babylon, the jewel of kingdoms, the glory of the Babylonians' pride, will be overthrown by God like Sodom and Gomorrah. His words painted a picture not merely of political defeat, but of divine judgment, a verdict sealed in the heavens long before armies marched against its gates. The Medes and Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, became the instruments of this judgment. Historical accounts tell of a stunning military strategy. The invaders diverted the flow of the Euphrates River, allowing their soldiers to slip into the city under the cover of night through the now dry riverbed. Babylon's mighty walls and iron gates proved useless against the quiet, patient hand of destiny. That night, the city that seemed eternal was taken without a battle cry, fulfilling prophecies uttered generations earlier. But the fall of Babylon was more than the collapse of stone and mortar, it was the shattering of a spirit that had exalted itself above God. The book of Daniel reveals that on the very night of the city's conquest, King Belshazzar feasted in reckless arrogance, drinking from the sacred vessels stolen from the temple in Jerusalem. In the midst of his revelry, a mysterious hand appeared, writing words of doom on the palace wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Daniel interpreted the writing with unwavering boldness. Babylon's days were numbered, it had been weighed in the scales and found wanting, and its kingdom would be divided. Within hours, the prophecy came to pass. Yet the story of Babylon does not end in ancient ruins. In the book of Revelation, Babylon rises again, not as a physical city, but as a spiritual and political system opposed to God. This, mystery Babylon, is described as a seductive yet corrupt force, adorned in luxury yet drunk on the blood of the saints. She is the embodiment of rebellion against Yahweh, a shadow stretching from the plains of Mesopotamia into the last days of human history. The prophet John's vision is chilling, a voice from heaven cries out, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins or receive any of her plagues." This connection between ancient Babylon and its prophetic future has fueled centuries of speculation. Some see it as a warning about empires that rise in arrogance and fall in shame. Others see it as a symbol of a global order, united in wealth and technology, yet hostile to the authority of the Creator. In either case, the message is clear: no kingdom built on pride and injustice can stand before the eternal reign of God. Even today, archaeologists and historians wander the ruins of Babylon, their eyes tracing the outlines of fallen walls and broken gates. Beneath the dust and silence lies the memory of a city that once claimed to be the gateway to heaven, yet became a monument to human frailty. The Ishtar Gate, now preserved in a museum far from its homeland, glimmers with blue tiles and fierce lions, a ghost of the glory that once was. It is a reminder that earthly splendor, no matter how dazzling, fades before the power of divine justice. But perhaps the most haunting legacy of Babylon is not its ruins, but its spirit. The temptation to build without God, to rule without humility, to revel in excess while ignoring righteousness, this is the Babylon that still whispers to the nations. Its fall in history stands as both a warning and a promise, a warning to the proud, and a promise to those who trust in Yahweh, that his kingdom alone will endure. And so, the mysteries of Babylon remain, etched in prophecy, preserved in ruins, and echoed in the destiny of the world. The city's story is not just ancient history, it is a living parable, a shadow stretching across time, calling every generation to choose whom they will serve, the fleeting empires of men, or the everlasting kingdom of God. Babylon's walls stood tall, but its heart grew hollow. The city that had once been a marvel of engineering, beauty, and political power became a fortress of pride, idolatry, and spiritual decay. Its temples still glittered in the sun, but inside, truth had been replaced with deception. The worship of the living God, Yahweh, was nowhere to be found. Instead, Babylon's priests taught the people to bow before idols of gold, silver, wood, and stone, objects that could neither see nor hear, speak nor save. In its golden age, Babylon claimed to be the center of wisdom. Scholars, astronomers, and scribes filled its palaces, writing on clay tablets the movements of the stars and the stories of their gods. But this wisdom was mixed with sorcery and forbidden knowledge, the kind of hidden arts that draw humanity away from the Creator. Babylon became a place where truth was twisted, where light was mixed with darkness, and where men sought power without righteousness. It is no wonder, then, that in the scriptures Babylon became a symbol, not merely of a city, but of a system. A system that opposes God, that seduces nations with wealth and luxury, but leads them into spiritual ruin. The prophets saw Babylon as more than bricks and mortar, they saw it as the embodiment of rebellion, the mother of harlots, who spread her corruption across the earth. The book of Isaiah records God's decree: Babylon, the jewel of kingdoms, the glory of the Babylonians' pride, will be overthrown by God like Sodom and Gomorrah. It would be a fall so great that its ruins would become the dwelling place of owls and wild beasts, a silent reminder of what happens when pride replaces obedience to the Most High. The fall of ancient Babylon came under the Persian king Cyrus, fulfilling the prophecies written decades before. The city that thought it could never be conquered was taken in a single night. Its gates, which had once been symbols of invincibility, were opened without a battle. The rivers that had fed its gardens became the very path of its enemies. Babylon's pride met its end, but its spirit, the spirit of rebellion, did not die with its walls. The New Testament's book of Revelation speaks of another Babylon, Mystery Babylon, a future power that will once again rise to influence the nations. This Babylon is described as wealthy, adorned with gold and precious stones, intoxicated with the blood of the saints. It is a system of commerce, politics, and false religion, captivating the kings of the earth with its promises, yet hiding its true purpose, to lead humanity away from the worship of the one true God. John's vision is vivid. He sees this Babylon fall suddenly, in 1 hour, as the merchants of the earth weep over the loss of her riches. He hears a voice from heaven calling God's people to separate themselves from her sins, so that they will not share in her judgment. The destruction is total, final, and irreversible, a divine act that demonstrates that no empire, no system, no city that opposes God can stand forever. And so, the story of Babylon, both ancient and prophetic, serves as a warning. Wealth without righteousness is an illusion. Power without submission to God is a trap. Pride without humility leads only to ruin. Babylon's gardens are gone. Its palaces are dust. But the lesson remains as alive as ever: every generation faces the choice to follow the ways of the world or to walk in obedience to the Creator. As we look upon the ruins of the ancient city, we remember, its beauty could not save it. Its knowledge could not protect it. Its walls could not shield it from the judgment of the Almighty. The true strength of a nation, or of any people, is not in its armies, its wealth, or its fame, but in its relationship with the living God. And when that relationship is broken, when a people turn their hearts away from Him, the collapse is only a matter of time. This is the mystery and the warning of Babylon. It is not just a story of the past, but a prophecy for the future. And for those with ears to hear, the message is clear: come out of her, my people, says the Lord, so that you will not share in her sins or receive any of her plagues. And across the Euphrates, the empire's heart continued to beat with the echoes of its past grandeur. But within those echoes, there was also a whisper of its impending fate, a destiny foretold by prophets, written in the scrolls of the Most High. Babylon, once adorned like a bride in gold and scarlet, stood proud, yet unaware of the hourglass nearly emptied. The palaces of Nebuchadnezzar still gleamed with the glory of craftsmanship unmatched in the ancient world. Towering columns lined with lapis lazuli reflected the sun's fire, and the streets bustled with merchants speaking in tongues from across the known earth. To the human eye, this was a city eternal, a fortress of culture, wealth, and power. But to the eyes of heaven, Babylon was already weighed in the balance. Daniel's words, once spoken in the royal court, echoed through time: mean, tekel, upharsin. These words were not merely an inscription on a wall, they were the seal of Babylon's judgment. The city that once reached toward the heavens with its ziggurats now reached toward the abyss with its pride and idolatry. It had traded the worship of Yahweh for the worship of the work of men's hands, exchanging the truth of God for a lie. As night fell, the riverbanks flickered with the glow of oil lamps. Priests of Marduk conducted their rituals, believing their incantations would ensure Babylon's immortality. But far beyond the city walls, an army was already moving. The Medes and Persians, under Cyrus the Great, advanced with silent determination. Babylon's gates, thought to be impregnable, would soon be betrayed, not by force of arms, but by the hand of God. The Euphrates itself became the instrument of Babylon's undoing. Diverted by the cunning of Cyrus, the river's flow dropped, allowing his soldiers to march under the gates along the dry riverbed. In a single night, the unthinkable happened. The city of wonders was taken without a full battle. The streets that once sang with celebration now echoed with the sound of soldiers' boots. The empire that claimed to rule the world fell in silence. Prophecy had been fulfilled. Isaiah had spoken of this moment over a century earlier. Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. The very foundations of the city trembled under the weight of divine judgment. Yet, even in its fall, Babylon's shadow would linger over history. In the book of Revelation, the name Babylon becomes more than a city, it becomes a symbol. A symbol of every empire, every system, and every heart that sets itself against God. The mystery of Babylon is that it never truly vanished. It reappears in different forms, clothed in different cultures, whispering the same temptation, to replace the Creator with the creation, to exchange eternal truth for fleeting power. John's vision on the Isle of Patmos saw a Babylon yet to come, a spiritual and political power that intoxicates the nations with her immorality, adorned with riches, yet destined for sudden destruction. In the vision, the angel's voice thundered, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." This was not merely a reminder of the ancient city's fate but a warning for all ages. For those who hear this message today, the call is clear: come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins or receive any of her plagues. The mysteries of Babylon are not locked in the past, they live in every heart that chooses rebellion over obedience, pride over humility, and corruption over purity. But for those who choose the narrow path, there is deliverance. Babylon's story is not just about bricks, walls, and kings, it is about the eternal battle between light and darkness, truth and deception. The ruins along the Euphrates are a silent testimony that no power, no matter how great, can stand against the will of Yahweh. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall, but his kingdom endures forever. Today, the wind still sweeps across the land where Babylon once stood. The grandeur is gone, replaced by desolate mounds and scattered stones. But the lesson remains: pride leads to downfall, and only in the fear of the Lord is there true wisdom. The same God who humbled Babylon will humble every power that exalts itself against him. The final mystery of Babylon is that while her physical walls have crumbled, her spirit seeks new cities to inhabit. It moves through history, enticing rulers, corrupting nations, and drawing hearts away from their Creator. Yet, for those who see with spiritual eyes, her mask is transparent, her promises empty, and her destiny certain. For in the end, the Lamb will overcome. The kingdoms of this world will become the kingdom of our Lord and his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Babylon's might will be a memory, but the glory of Yahweh will shine without end. And on that day, all creation will know, the mysteries of Babylon are solved, her power is broken, and her end is complete.